Right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the European Commission's press room. President von der Leyen and Dr. Fatih Birol, the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, will talk to you about energy. And with no further ado, I give the floor to the President.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and I'm very happy to welcome here Fatih Birol. Indeed, we had a very good discussion on an energy outlook for Europe and how to deal with the unprecedented disruptions that have been caused by Russia's atrocious war. Russia indeed has cut its pipeline supplies by 80% if you compare September this year to September last year, 80%. And we all know that these pipeline gas cuts have added unprecedented pressure on the global energy markets, with severe knock-on effects on Europe's energy system. But I want to emphasize that despite these enormous cuts, we have been able to manage, we have been able to withstand the blackmail. We've acted, and we've acted successfully. 7 months ago in May, we have presented our response to this Russian blackmail by putting on the table REPowerEU, our plan to reduce the demand for Russian gas by 2/3 before the end of this year. And we have underpinned this proposal with an investment plan of up to 300 billion euros. And in just a few months, we have turned the REPowerEU plan into many different legislative proposals and actions on the ground. And I think it's worth to look at that. Basically, we have taken in the last 10 months 10 different actions. The first one is we have enormously diversified away from Russian fossil fuels, away from Russian gas supplies, towards other reliable, trustworthy suppliers. Second, we are saving energy. We have introduced, as you all know, the target to reduce gas demand by 15%. And if we look at the data from early autumn, we are very well on track. It's good that we are saving energy, and we have to keep on saving energy. The third point is we are boosting the rollout of renewables. If you look at the year 2022, we will have added almost 50 gigawatt of new capacity. That is almost doubling the additional capacity of renewable energy, mostly from wind and solar. And this is for us very important because this is not only good for the planet, but we know that renewables are homegrown, they create good jobs here, and they create independence and security of supply. The fourth point is that in this context of renewables, we have proposed to speed up drastically the permitting process for renewables. We know that many projects are basically ready to go if the permitting was there, so this has to be faster. Therefore, we have put a proposal on speeding up the permitting process on the table. The fifth point is that we have put in place a minimum gas storage obligation. Our storages are now filled by more than 90%, so we have overshooted the target. That's very good. And we're well above the previous 5-year average. The sixth point is on solidarity. We have proposed default arrangements for the supply of gas between member states, where solidarity agreements are not in place yet, to make sure in an energy emergency we can ensure that the gas is going and flowing where to it is needed most. The seventh point is we have set up a platform for the joint purchasing of gas to increase our negotiation leverage and get better prices. I think it's unacceptable that different member states are outbidding each other on the global market and thus driving up the prices. Therefore, it is important that we join forces for the negotiation on a global level. The eighth point is we have improved our infrastructure. We have 4 new interconnectors that became operational this year. It's the Baltic Pipe, it's the interconnector Poland-Lithuania, the interconnector between Bulgaria and Greece, and the gas interconnector between Poland and Slovakia. The ninth point I want to highlight is the fact that we have put out a legal framework that enables member states to skim off the windfall profits, the super profits of energy-producing companies, to take this money and to support by that in a targeted manner the vulnerable households and the vulnerable businesses. And finally, the 10th point is we proposed a market correction mechanism, known also as the price cap, to limit spikes in gas prices at TTF level. Many of these measures have been adopted, some in record speed, and there are many examples that show that change is beginning. For example, the massive and rapid uptake of heat pumps in Poland. The result of all these actions is that we are safe for this winter. Russia's blackmail has failed. However, some of our proposals are still under discussion, and they are essential for our energy preparedness. Therefore, I call on the Council to adopt them swiftly, because preparing for the next winter, winter 23-24, starts now. And this is now that we're turning our focus on the winter 23-24. I'm very pleased, dear Fatih Birol, that we've worked on that so intensively together. 1 month ago, your message was very clear, and you underpinned your message with figures and numbers. You said very clearly the coming winter will be even more challenging, and Europe needs to step up its efforts in several fields. You outlined the risks. It might be possible that Russia cuts the rest of the pipeline gas supply. China could lift the COVID restriction and thus go back to energy demand on the global market on pre-COVID level. And of course, this year we benefit from an extraordinary warm winter. This also could be different next year. I know from your data that despite the action that we have taken, we might still face a gap of up to 30 billion cubic meter of gas next year. The actions that we have set in motion will help cover part of this, but more is needed. And here I want to look at a few priorities we need to focus on. The first one is, of course, the LNG supply. I'm confident that we will secure similar volumes of LNG next year as we had this year. This year we had up to 130 billion cubic meter of LNG. And for this, of course, we have to further intensify our outreach to our international partners. My second point is it is time now that we make joint purchasing a reality. We have the energy platform in place. We have to operationalize it now in the joint purchasing mechanism. Every day of delay comes with a price tag. We have discussions with member states, partner countries and their companies that are ongoing. This evening, tonight, I will discuss this matter with the Norwegian Prime Minister, for example. We can launch the first tender for demand aggregation by the end of March, but for that, we need to have an agreement on the emergency regulation we proposed on the 18th of October, and we need it now. And my final point is that the greatest potential for energy in the European Union is in our own hands. We must scale up and accelerate the deployment of renewables. We must go big and we must be fast. With the right policies in place, we can even double the capacity of renewable energy that we add to the market next year. And the case has never been better. In 22, we had record additions of wind and solar capacity to the European Union, and we expect renewable capacity to rise even further in the coming year, replacing around 12 billion cubic meter of gas. And you are showing us with your additional measures that we can add an additional 7.5 billion cubic meters. So if you look at the overall scope, efficiency, savings, joint purchasing, renewables, this might be the mixture we need to make up for the missing gas next year. We've taken the action that is necessary. Our proposals are now on the table. My last comment is on the bigger picture. Because if we look at the bigger picture, we also see that we need an increase in public investment in the energy transition, mostly to ensure the competitiveness of our European industry in the energy transition. We need additional public investment on a national level and on a European level. You know that in the short term, we will propose to boost REPowerEU. REPowerEU is our vehicle, the framework for investment in clean tech. We will propose to boost it. And this is one part of our response to the US Inflation Reduction Act. But we also know that in the midterm, we have to step up. And there we will work on setting up a sovereignty fund to make sure that Europe continues to be the global leader in clean tech. Where we have to help our industry is now in this high energy price environment to make the transition, to bridge the transition to green, clean energy that is affordable and secure, and therefore this funding is necessary. Our work has been good this year. We see the progress. We have come quite a long way, but we know that we are not done with our work till families and business in the European Union have access to energy that is affordable, that is secure, and that is clean. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, President. Dr. Birol.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It's a great honor for me and for my agency to share this stage with you today. Thank you very much, Madam. Dear colleagues, we are in the middle of the first truly global energy crisis. Our world has never ever witnessed an energy crisis of this depth and of this complexity. All the countries around the world are affected with this energy crisis, but of course, Ukraine is the main victim. As I mentioned to Madam President a few minutes ago, this afternoon I am going to meet Ukrainian Energy Minister Galushenko to sign a joint work program for the next 2 years. First, to support Ukrainian energy system for the next months to come, and second, assist Ukraine to build a modern energy system after the war. But of course, Europe is heavily affected from the energy crisis, as Russia was a key supplier of energy for Europe since decades. And I want to commend the focus that the Madam President and her commissioners have brought to this issue. Now, International Energy Agency has responded to this crisis very quickly in our nimble way. 24th of February was the invasion. 1st of March, only 1 week later, we came up with a 10-point plan for Europe, what European countries can do in order to reduce the reliance on Russian gas and what measures need to be taken, ranging from efficiency to renewables, penetration, acceleration of those, and to the topics which are hot topics in Europe, such as postponing of phasing out of nuclear power in some countries. And they were very much aligned with the REPowerEU, came from the Commission, and we are very happy that many governments in Europe have taken up our suggestions. Now, as Madam President mentioned, Europe has done a lot to increase the resilience of the European energy system in the last several months. And today, we are, this winter, it looks like we are off the hook. We may go through this winter with some economic and social bruises, but normally we should go through this winter as a result of all the measures taken in Europe, because our gas storages are very high. But the message that I am bringing up to you today is that the crisis is not over. And next year may well be, 2023, may well be much more difficult than this year, for three reasons. First, in the year 2021, Russian gas exports to Europe was about 140 BCM. This year it went down to 60 BCM as 2022, and it is very likely that next year we may not have any Russian gas in our system. So there was a decline, and as we all know, Russia is using the gas as a weapon when it comes to certain political issues. So next year, the first reason why we are thinking next year may be more difficult, first, Russian gas, which is declining already substantially, may not be with us at all. Second, LNG. As Madam President mentioned, this year we import a lot of LNG from US and other sources, but next year might be even more difficult. The reason is the amount of new LNG capacity, LNG supply, LNG coming from the exporting countries is at record low, only 20 BCM. We have recently never ever seen such a small amount of additional capacity coming. In Europe, we are building many countries LNG import capacity. It's about 40 BCM coming next year, but the new LNG coming to market is very, very limited. And on top of that, China, a top LNG importer of the world, as a result of possible comeback to economy, China may already eat up a big portion of that. So LNG markets will be tight. This is the second reason. Third reason why we are worried about the next year is that this year we have experienced unusually mild temperatures. And when you look at it today and the next days, the temperature in Europe, we may well see that the next weeks will be rather difficult in terms of the temperature, and also nobody can guarantee that next year's temperature will be as mild as this year. So putting these three things together, namely, there may not be Russian gas deliveries at all, LNG markets will be exceptionally tight, and third, that we may not be able to benefit from the mild temperature means that we may have a problem. So therefore, we made this report that I have the honor to launch today with Madam President. We think that next year, Europe supply-demand gap 2023 may reach the 30 BCM. It's a big number, 30 BCM, the gap. And if those efforts you mentioned, Madam President, you have done with your colleagues were not there, this gap would have been 60 BCM. As a result of these efforts, we have brought down to 30 BCM. This is a serious challenge, and therefore we thought, what can Europe do between now and next winter in order to close this gap? What kind of measures, and which are in line with Europe's climate goals? So we can do many things, but we have chosen the measures which are practical, can be done in 1 year, very short time for energy sector, 1 year, and at the same time in line with Europe's climate goals. We have chosen 5 topics, and I will finish with that. The first one is faster improvement in energy efficiency, especially renovation of buildings, focusing on the social housing first, and providing incentive for renovation of the buildings. Or another example we have, many countries in Europe don't have in their street lighting LED lighting move to LED lighting, incentivize them, and save energy there. So the first one is energy efficiency. We have a lot of suggestions and examples, but I've chosen these two. Second, faster deployment of renewables. As Madam President said, this year we have seen a major record deployment of renewables. The reason is, in the past, the main driver for renewables in Europe was climate change, and now energy security is the main driver of renewables. We have seen major improvement there, and still there is a long project pipeline, and they are waiting for licensing and permitting. And it is, in our view, imperative that the countries are shortening this licensing and permitting time, and as it is done in some countries, that the governments show the suitable areas for larger projects. And the authorization process, it takes ages in some countries, should be done in a one-go shops, one-stop go shops in many countries. The third one is the heat pumps. 1/3 of the European gas is consumed for heating in the buildings. And going from the gas heating to electricity heating, we have already available proven technology, heat pumps, and there is a need for further incentivizing the heat pumps, changing the electricity tariffs to provide additional incentive for heat pumps. This will also save, again, gas. And fourth, the changing the behavior of the consumers. Well-designed communication campaigns would be helpful here. Again, according to our analysis, in Europe today, the average temperature in the buildings are about 22 degrees Celsius. Bringing it down 1 degree Celsius would save us about 10 BCM, so a significant amount. And the fifth and the last measure that we are suggesting is, in some of the countries that are exporting gas to Europe, especially the countries in like Algeria, Egypt, a lot of gas is flaring. Just through methane, it is flaring. If they are captured, which is very easy and cheap, and if there's an incentive there, that gas can be just sent to Europe in the context of, we say them, you capture, we pay for it. It can provide additional gas to Europe. These measures are already documented in our report. You will see easily done, practical and real-world impact measures, and they would cost, they wouldn't be for free, they would cost 100 billion euros in 1 year. So we have to pay 100 billion euros in order to implement them, but that 100 billion euros will be paid back in 2 years in terms of saving natural gas bills. So this is in 2 years they pay back this $100 billion of investments, and they will bring multiple benefits to weaken the pressure on the households and the businesses. This is perhaps a very important one. Second, they are going to accelerate the clean energy transition. Third, they will comfort the international markets. And fourth, they will provide a firm answer to Russia weaponizing energy. So I would like to stop here, and there are some proposals we are following at the IEA, as Madam President mentioned. We very much hope that those proposals, Madam President, see the light of the day as soon as possible, because we need an urgent decision, and it is never too early to address the problems of next winter. We are thankful to you for your leadership, and we are happy to work with the European Commission and with the Member States, and we are at your disposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will now take a few questions. There were many requests already. Please note that there is a technical briefing following this press conference, so you may save your more technical questions for our experts from the European Commission and from the agency. And let's start from right, Karl.
Good afternoon. Carl de Meyer for the French daily Les Echos. Good afternoon, Mrs. President. I have three questions for you, if I may. I was very interested when you mentioned the sovereignty fund. Sorry. Can you please give us more details on what it could look like, and what do you hear from the member states about it? Do you sense an appetite for it? And do you think it is time for the EU to have a new common borrowing instrument? And then I would like to ask you about nuclear fusion. We hear from the United States that there has been groundbreaking progress about this technology. Is it something that the EU is looking at? And tonight you have a very interesting dinner in Paris. What do you expect from your talks with the Norwegians?
Yeah. So the Sovereignty Fund. First of all, again, for the short term, we have REPowerEU, which we have to boost. REPowerEU defines the investment targets and elements. It's mainly the clean tech sector, it's energy efficiency, it's infrastructure that is needed, and it's renewables. And here we propose to boost REPowerEU, but we will certainly also have to approach a midterm review of our budget, because our budget has been decided at a time where we had no clue of all the crises coming up. Therefore, the question is whether it is still fit for purpose. And a fresh look through a midterm review at the budget would open the door to create a sovereignty fund that certainly would not only be fed by existing European funds that we have already in place, but would have then also to be augmented by other sources. But this is for the midterm if we look at that. The fusion, indeed, we look at a lot of interest at the breakthrough that is being reported on the nuclear fusion. This breakthrough is based on a different technology pathway than ITER. So it demonstrates that the case to continue investing in nuclear fusion is strong. And this, of course, includes through ITER the topic of ITER, because ITER is, for example, involving also the United States as an integral partner. So we need various approaches to securing this clean energy in the future, but it is very interesting, and it shows that it is worthwhile to intensify the work and the research on fusion. Finally, Norway. Indeed, our teams have been working intensively on this issue, and I'm very much looking forward to speak with the Norwegian Prime Minister today. On one hand, to take stock of the progress, and on the other hand, also to move forward. You might recall that we had a joint statement in October, and there we emphasized that we fully share on one hand, the concerns about the current level of high energy prices, that we agree politically and economically they are unsustainable. And in that statement, we together expressed our determination that prices should be significantly reduced. What we have to do is to work on a balance between the short-term price reduction and longer-term cooperation. So we could, for example, look into the option of longer-term contracts. But I would also highly appreciate if there's a possibility to have Norwegian energy supply companies joining our joint purchase platform, so to go also in that topic. And last but not least, we both agree, the Norwegian Prime Minister and me, that was also part of our statement, that a massive investment in clean energy production has to be done with this amount of money that is coming additionally to the energy producing companies. I want to recall that Norway sent an additional 9 billion cubic meter of gas to Europe this year. This is a lot. And it is important that these efforts, I know that they are really pushing their efforts to the maximum, that these maximum efforts are being sustained.
Thank you very much. Irini, next.
Thank you, Dana. Irene Zakadoula with Greek Public TV and Athens Agency. Madam President, the negotiations on price cap are ongoing. However, the European citizens are wondering, why is it impossible to reach an agreement faster that could lower their bills? And when should we expect to have an agreement on this correction mechanism? Thank you.
Yeah, we all know that for the market correction mechanism, the issue is to find the right balance, that we cut off the price spikes and manipulation and speculation, and on the other hand, that we do not cut off supply coming to the European market. Here we have to find the right balance. The proposal is on the table. A lot of work has been done. The technicalities are set. So what we need now is a political agreement on what kind of price cap, where the balance is of what kind of price cap we want. So political agreement on the scope, on the threshold, and the threshold includes that we are aware that we have to include the risk of demand reduction, that we have to include the security of supply and the stability, the financial stability. Those three items have to be included in the political decision on scope and threshold. I very much hope that we will come to a conclusion within the next days.
Thank you. Next one will be Alice. Yeah, well, get another mic then. Yeah, it works.
Thank you. Sorry, Alice, Financial Times. Thank you, Madam President, for taking my question. I had two. One is related to energy. I wanted to ask, we're aware that there's a huge effort to wean off Russian hydrocarbons, but there has also been a huge jump in imports of Russian liquefied natural gas. At the same time, what plans, if any, does the Commission have to reduce reliance on Russian LNG? And an un-energy-related one, following the probe into Qatari influence in the European Parliament we saw over the weekend, I wondered if you could tell us whether the Commission will now pursue your proposal from 2019 to set up an ethics body, and if you could update us on that pledge.
Yeah. Indeed, Russia tries partially to circumvent by increasing LNG supply to the European market. That's not easy to trace. But what we know is, as overall the LNG supply has increased, the share of the Russian LNG has decreased. So it is a mixed story, and we have to look deeper into it and look into possibilities to make sure that we have LNG from reliable suppliers. But as I said, it's not easy to trace. I don't know whether it's of interest for you to comment on that too.
This is the LNG imports from Russia increased, but from a very, very low levels. The main issue is the pipelines, and from the pipelines we are seeing a major decline, as I mentioned, from 140 BCM to 60 BCM. But the LNG import increase, it seems high in terms of percentage, but in terms of the absolute value, it's about 5-6 BCM, which is really peanuts.
Yes. And to your second question, indeed, the allegations against the Vice President of the European Parliament are of utmost concern, very serious. It is a question of confidence of people into our institutions, and this confidence and trust into our institutions needs highest standards and of independence and integrity. And you're right, I propose the creation of an independent ethics body that covers all EU institutions and to be established with the highest standards for all institutions. It is important. I wrote this letter not only to Council and the European Parliament, but, for example, also to the European Court of Justice, the ECB, the European Court of Auditors. I'm speaking about all institutions. I sent this letter in March. The Vice President Jourova is currently discussing with the European Parliament and the Council the way forward. For us, it is very critical to have not only strong rules, but the same rules also covering all the European institutions and not to allow for any kind of exemptions. So it's a matter of transparency, it's a matter of very clear rules, and all the European institutions should abide to the same rules that we put in place.
Thank you very much. I will now go online where we have a few hands up. Eva, go ahead.
Yes, hello, Eva Krukowska at Bloomberg News.
Could turn on your camera. Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam President, a quick question on joint purchases. The idea has been around for a while, but no big interest has been seen from member states or companies. What are you planning to do in order to encourage them to practically implement that? And to Dr. Birol, first of all, does the 30 BCM supply-demand gap assume no Russian gas? And my second question would be, how do you think the EU proposed gas price cap could help or not help the market? Thank you.
So indeed, with the joint purchase platform, we've established it and we have a political agreement on it. It's a voluntary participation. But what we've seen over the last weeks is that the interest is drastically increasing in this joint platform because by now almost everybody sees that it is important that we join forces and have thus the leverage of our joint forces on the global market. So what we need now is we have put a legal proposal on the table, and we hope and expect that the Council will agree on this legal proposal within the next days.
In terms of the 30 BCM assumes, first of all, no Russian gas exports to Europe, and at the same time, temperatures go back to the normal seasonal levels and the limited amount of LNG. So as a result, we come to 30 BCM. As I mentioned, if those measures in Europe have not been taken this year, this would have been 60 BCM, but 30 BCM alone is a major issue because if we are not able to address this 30 BCM, at the end of the next winter season, 90% of our storage levels today will go to 30% only. This is one. In terms of the gas price mechanism, the gas price cap mechanism, I think this is a good correction mechanism if it is well designed to protect the consumers, because even though the gas prices are today coming down, they are still 7 times higher than the historical averages. And here, well-designed, meaning it shouldn't give Europe the role that it can get gas only. This is one. In terms of the gas price mechanism, the gas price cap mechanism, I think this is a good correction mechanism if it is well designed to protect the consumers, because even though the gas prices are today coming down, they are still 7 times higher than the historical averages. And here, well designed, meaning it shouldn't give Europe the role that it can get gas from the other markets, outcompete many others, but at the same time protect the consumers here. The level of the price will be here very important, but in general, it's a good way to go with the right price level.
Right. Next one is Martina.
Part of your diplomacy. Can you tell us if the European Commission stands behind Mr. Skinas and all his public statements relating to the World Cup? Are you conducting any internal checks or investigations as to all of your commissioners' visits to Qatar and transactions with Qatar, meetings with Qatar and so on? And can you say anything else about how the European Commission intends to deal with this when it itself has taken a fairly pro-Qatar stance, given the scrutiny the entire EU is under? Thank you.
So, as you know, we work with Qatar on global issues, such as climate change. We work with Qatar on regional issues, such as peace and stability in Afghanistan and the Middle East, and on bilateral issues, such as the diversification away from Russian fossil fuels. And, of course, the European Union remains vocal on the issues where we see problems, for example, through the regular human rights dialogue that we have and that takes place at a senior office level, official level. So the last one was in September. And the discussions we had on the ongoing Qatari reform of its labour market, we have been working in close coordination with the ILO. So I think this shows that there's a wide range of different levels of work that has to be done. I think it is important now to check what the next topics are. We are checking on our side the transparency register that we have, where all meetings of college members and members of their cabinets with interest representatives are published. So we are very transparent on that one. And that is the reason why we think that we have quite some experience how to establish an ethics body. We have one with very clear rules internally in the European Commission. And again, therefore, I think it is time to discuss whether we could not establish this overall for all European institutions. I'm not advocating that others join the same type we have, but the principles of having such an ethics body where there are very clear rules on what has to be checked how and when and what has to be published how and when would be a big step forward.
Thank you very much. Now, last question, Anita, remotely.
Madam President, Anita Bittig, Phoenix. If I may, ich würde Sie gerne bitten um ein Statement auf Deutsch zum Korruptionsskandal im Europäischen Parlament und zu den Konsequenzen, die das haben.
Ja, in der Tat, die Vorwürfe gegen die Vizepräsidentin des Europäischen Parlaments sind sehr schwerwiegend. Und wir wissen, dass sie große Besorgnis auslösen mit dem Blick auf das Vertrauen, das die Menschen in unsere europäischen Institutionen haben. Wir brauchen die höchsten Standards und wir brauchen Unabhängigkeit und Integrität über diese höchsten Standards. Das ist der Grund, dass ich schon vor geraumer Zeit einen Prozess angestoßen habe, um mit anderen europäischen Institutionen darüber zu sprechen, wie es uns gelingen kann, diese hohen Standards, der Unabhängigkeit und Integrität zu sichern. Meiner Meinung nach wäre es richtig, dass wir ein Ethikgremium einrichten. Wir haben ein solches Ethikgremium bei der Europäischen Kommission. Es muss nicht dasselbe sein, aber mir ist wichtig, dass wir mit allen anderen europäischen Institutionen klare Regeln, klare Standards haben, dass wir alle die gleichen Kontrollmechanismen haben und dass wir sozusagen gemeinsam diese hohen Standards für Integrität und Unabhängigkeit setzen. Die Vizepräsidentin Jourova hat bereits begonnen, die Gespräche mit dem Europäischen Parlament und dem Europäischen Rat. Und ich hoffe, dass wir diesen Prozess jetzt schneller vorantreiben können.
Thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget the technical briefing on energy, which is starting at the end of this press conference. I know that there were more colleagues who wanted to ask questions, but there will be several other press conferences. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Oliver. I'm sorry, Oliver. I'm sorry, Oliver. This is not the way to organize a press conference here. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, Martina. The President took 3 questions which were outside the scope of this press conference. We have another guest in the room, and we are going to conclude the press conference here. So we are going to have another 2 press conferences this week.
So what the contact of the Belgian authorities with the Commission is concerned, I would have to ask my staff. So this is a very clear question that we would have to provide, so I cannot answer that one. And as I said, we're checking every detail on the transparency register. We have very clear rules for all commissioners. We look into that with in view of what has happened at the European Parliament. And here we have to check how the situation is I think as long as there are no new informations, we are at the status quo. But indeed, if any kind of new information occurs, we will have to act and react to that.
And thank you very much for your patience and understanding. There will be 2 more press conferences with the President this week. Should new information arise, you will have the opportunity to hear that. Thank you so much.